Honey, I didn't just see the man I spent 20 years hating. I smelled him first. It wasn't a smell you ever get used to, no matter how many years you live in the rougher parts of the city. It was that sharp, sour stink of old booze, unwashed skin, and alley dirt that hits you like a physical slap when you walk past the Bottle Redemption Center on a hot July day. The heat was rising off the asphalt in shimmering waves, making the air feel thick and heavy, like walking through warm soup. I was just trying to get past the line of folks waiting with their shopping carts full of aluminum cans. I held my breath, clutching my purse tight against my chest, not because I had much money in it, Lord knows, but because that $5 bill inside had to buy me bread and milk for the week. Then I heard him cough. It wasn't just a throat-clearing cough. It was a rattle deep in a chest that didn't have much life left in it, a wet, tearing sound that spoke of cold nights on concrete and lungs filled with fluid. I turned my head, just a glance, really. I didn't want to stare. My mama raised me better than to stare at the unfortunate. He was hunched over a plastic crate, sorting through crushed soda cans with trembling hands. His fingers were black with grime, the nails cracked and long. He wore a coat that might have been gray once, but was now a map of stains and grease, tied around his boots with bits of orange twine. But then he dropped a can. It rolled towards my shoe.
He looked up to grab it, and the world stopped. The noise of the traffic faded. The shouting of the man weighing the cans disappeared. All I could see were those eyes. They were milky now, surrounded by red, inflamed rims and dirt packed deep into wrinkles I didn't recognize. But they were his eyes, that specific shade of cornflower blue that used to catch the morning light in our kitchen. Thaddius, my husband, the man who walked out the front door 20 years ago to buy a carton of milk and left me to drown in a sea of debts I didn't create. My grocery bag slipped right out of my sweating hand and smashed onto the pavement. A jar of pickles shattered, the brine splashing onto my orthopedic shoes, but I didn't even flinch. I felt like a ghost had just walked out of a grave and punched me in the stomach. Hello, dear listeners. Thank you for joining me today. Before I unspool this heavy thread of memory, I would be very happy if you subscribed to the channel and left a comment writing which state or country you are listening from. It always warms my old heart to see how far our stories travel. Get comfortable, grab a warm drink, and enjoy listening. To understand why seeing that poor, broken man on the street shattered my soul into a million jagged pieces, you have to understand what we used to be. You have to understand the height from which we fell. Before the darkness took him, Thaddius wasn't a beggar.
He was the kind of man who smelled like cedar shavings, crisp graph paper, and honest sweat. He was a structural engineer, brilliant, but so humble you'd never know he was the smartest man in the room. We had a life, honey. It wasn't a mansion and yacht kind of life, but it was rich in the things that matter. We lived in a little yellow house on Elm Street with white shutters and a porch swing where we'd sit and watch the fireflies dance in the twilight. I can still close my eyes and hear the creak of that swing. Creak, creak, rhythmic and soothing, like a heartbeat. Thaddius loved that house. He spent his weekends fixing the gutters or sanding the floors until they gleamed like honey. We didn't have children. God never blessed us that way, though we tried. So that house and each other was all we had. I remember Sundays. Sundays were for pot roast. Thaddius would stand behind me while I peeled the potatoes, wrapping his strong arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. He'd whisper, "Rose, you are the anchor of my life. As long as I have you, I'm the richest man in the state." And I believed him. Lord help me, I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? He was steady as a rock. He was the man who stopped the car to help turtles cross the road. He was the man who fixed the widow Mrs. Gable's roof for free after a storm. But then came the year everything changed. It started slow, like a leak in a dam you don't notice until the water is already up to your ankles. He started coming home late. At first, it was 7 o'clock, then 9, then midnight.
His face, usually so open and bright, turned gray with a worry he wouldn't share. He wouldn't eat my pot roast. He'd just push the potatoes around the plate with his fork, staring at nothing. When I asked him what was wrong, when I touched his shoulder, he would flinch. He'd pull away, his lips trembling, and say, "Don't you worry your pretty head, Rose. It's just work, just a complicated project." He started pacing the floors at night. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find his side of the bed cold. I'd go downstairs and find him sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, his head in his hands, weeping silently. "Thaddius?" I'd call out softly. He'd wipe his face frantically, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Go back to sleep, Rose. I have a headache." I should have pushed harder. I should have screamed. I should have demanded to know what demon was eating my husband from the inside out. But I was raised to be a gentle wife, to provide peace, not conflict. So I made him tea, and I went back to bed, leaving him alone with his ghosts. And then, the vanishing. It was a Tuesday in November. The sky was the color of a bruised plum, threatening snow. I remember because I was ironing his good blue shirt, the one with the stiff collar, for a big meeting he said he had the next day. He came into the laundry room. He didn't say anything at first.
He just stood there, watching me iron. Then he walked over and hugged me. It wasn't a normal hug, honey. It was desperate. He held me so tight my ribs hurt, burying his face in my neck, inhaling my scent like he was trying to memorize it. "I love you, Rose," he whispered. His voice sounded wrecked. "No matter what happens, no matter what you hear, remember that I love you more than life itself." "I love you too, silly," I laughed, patting his back, not knowing that was the last time I would touch him for 20 years. "Now, go get the milk, we're out." He walked out the door. I watched him get into his sedan through the window. He paused with his hand on the door handle, looked back at the house one last time, a long, lingering look, and then got in. He never came home for dinner. He never came home the next day. The police filed a report that they were callous. "Ma'am, grown men are allowed to leave," the officer said, snapping his gum. "Maybe he just got tired of the married life. It happens." "Not my Thaddius," I argued, weeping. "Something happened to him." But then, a week later, the letters started coming, and they weren't from kidnappers. They were from the bank. Foreclosure notices, loan defaults, credit card bills for amounts that made my head spin. It turned out, on paper, that's against his life insurance, against everything we owned in the 3 months before he left. He had drained our savings account to zero. The narrative seemed clear. The police shrugged. "Looks like your husband developed a gambling problem, or maybe a drug habit, ma'am. He took the cash and ran. It's a classic case." The betrayal was a physical blow. It felt like he had taken a knife and carved my heart out. I lost the yellow house within 6 months. I stood on the sidewalk and watched the auctioneers sell my mother's china, Thaddius's tools, our porch swing. I watched strangers handle our memories with careless hands. I had to move. I ended up in a cramped, drafty apartment over a 24-hour laundromat in the bad part of town. The smell of bleach and dryer sheets was constant, seeping into my clothes, into my hair. The floorboards vibrated all night from the washing machines below. I spent the next 2 decades scrubbing other people's floors, cleaning toilets in office buildings, my knuckles swelling with arthritis, my back bending under the weight of despair. And with every floor I scrubbed, my heart hardened. I hated him. Honey, I hated him with a fire that kept me warm on those lonely, freezing winter nights. I convinced myself he was off on some tropical island, sipping drinks with little umbrellas, laughing at the foolish woman he left behind. I imagined him with a young girlfriend, spending my money, living the life he stole from me. It was the only story that made sense. It was the only way I could explain the sudden cruelty of a man who used to save turtles. So when I saw him there by the recycling center 20 years later, looking like something the cat wouldn't even drag in, that anger I'd nursed for 2 decades didn't vanish. It exploded. I marched right up to him, my orthopedic shoes splashing through the puddle of pickle juice. "Thaddius," I whispered. My voice was shaking so hard it hurt my throat. It sounded like dry leaves scraping together. He froze. He stopped reaching for the soda can. Slowly, painfully, he turned his neck. He squinted at me through the grime on his face, trying to focus his milky eyes. And then I saw it, the flash of recognition, and immediately after, the flash of pure, unadulterated terror. "Rose," he rasped. It was barely a sound. "Look at you," I hissed, stepping closer, ignoring the stench coming off him. "Look at you. Where is the money, Thaddius? Where is the island? Where did you go?" He began to shake, not just his hands, but his whole body, rattling like an old engine. "Get away, Rose," he wheezed, scrambling backward on his hands and knees, crab walking away from me like a frightened animal. "You can't be here. Go. They'll see you." "Who will see me?" I screamed, my voice cracking. Passers-by were stopping to stare now. A woman clutching her pearls stepped back, looking at us with disgust. I didn't care. The only person seeing anything right now is me. You left me with nothing. You left me to rot. He backed into a stack of plastic crates, sending them toppling over with a loud clatter. He curled into a ball, covering his head with his arms, as if he expected me to hit him. "I had to," he choked out, sobbing into the dirt. "I had to, Rosie, to keep you safe. Please, go away before he sees you." "Who?" I demanded, grabbing the lapel of his filthy jacket. The fabric was stiff with grease. "Who are you talking about?" He looked up at me then, and the agony in his face was so raw it silenced my anger for a split second. "I never stopped loving you," he whispered. "Not for one day." And then his eyes rolled back in his head. His body went limp, dead weight in my hands. He collapsed on the hot asphalt, his head hitting the ground with a sickening thud. "Thaddius!" I screamed, dropping to my knees beside him, forgetting the dirt, forgetting the smell, forgetting everything but the fact that the man I had loved since I was 19 was dying on the pavement in front of me. I rode in the back of the ambulance with him. I don't know why I did it. Maybe old habits die hard. Maybe, despite the hate, seeing him so broken triggered some dormant instinct in me. The ambulance was loud, the siren wailing like a banshee. The paramedics were working fast, cutting open his layers of filthy shirts with shears. "Male, approximate 70, severe malnutrition, possible cardiac event," one paramedic shouted into his radio. As they peeled back the last layer of his rags, a stained undershirt that looked like it hadn't been changed in months, I gasped. I brought my hand to my mouth to stifle a scream. His chest. It wasn't just skinny, honey. You could count every rib, yes, but that wasn't what made my stomach turn. His torso was a road map of pain. There were scars, dozens of them. Some were old and faded white lines. Others were jagged and pink. There were round burn marks that looked like they came from cigars. There were long, thin lines that looked like they came from a whip or a belt. It looked like a war zone. It looked like torture. I stared at the scars, my mind racing, trying to reconcile the image of the selfish runaway husband with the broken, battered body lying on the stretcher. A man living on a tropical island with stolen millions doesn't have cigarette burns on his chest. A man living the high life doesn't weigh 110 pounds. Something was wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. The story I had told myself for 20 years, the story of the greedy husband, began to crack. At the hospital, they wheeled him into the ICU. I sat in the waiting room, staring at the linoleum floor. The smell of antiseptic was sharp, replacing the smell of the alley, but I could still phantom smell him on my hands. After 2 hours, a doctor came out. He was a young man, looking exhausted, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Ma'am, are you with Mr. Doe?" Miller, I said, my voice strong. His name is Thaddius Miller, and I'm his wife. I didn't say ex-wife. It didn't feel right in that moment. The doctor sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Mrs. Miller, your husband is in critical condition. He has pneumonia, severe dehydration, and his heart is very weak. But there's something else. He paused, looking uncomfortable. What is it, doctor? We found evidence of systemic, long-term physical trauma, multiple bone fractures that healed poorly without medical attention, ribs, fingers, even his collarbone. And the scarring? He looked me dead in the eye. Mrs. Miller, it looks like your husband has been systematically beaten, regularly, for years. The air left my lungs. Who did this? The doctor asked gently. Do you know who has been hurting him? I shook my head, tears finally spilling over. I haven't seen him in 20 years, doctor. I thought he was living the good life. He hasn't been living a good life, the doctor said grimly. Judging by his condition, he's been living in hell. They let me see him late that night. The machines were beeping rhythmically. Beep, beep, beep. A sterile replacement for the sound of our old porch swing. He was clean now. The nurses had scrubbed away the grime. Without the dirt, he looked so pale, like translucent paper. He looked so much like the Thaddius I remembered, just aged by 100 years. I pulled a metal chair up to the bedside. I reached out and took his hand. It was bony and rough, calloused from years of digging through trash. Thaddius, I whispered, wake up. You have to wake up and tell me what happened. You owe me that. His eyelids fluttered. Slowly they opened. The blue was clearer now, though still dim. He looked at the ceiling, then at the IV drip, and finally at me. Panic flared in his eyes again, but he was too weak to move. Rose, he croaked, you shouldn't be here. Is he here? Did Thorne see you? Who is Thorne? I asked, squeezing his hand. Thaddius, look at me. Nobody is here but us. Who is Thorne? He closed his eyes, a tear leaking out from the corner. Marcus Thorne, he whispered. The name hit me like a bucket of ice water. Marcus Thorne. Everyone in the state knew that name. He was our senator, a man of the people, a man who was constantly on the news, cutting ribbons and kissing babies, a billionaire businessman turned politician. What about Senator Thorne? I asked, confused. Thaddius let out a bitter, wheezing laugh that turned into a cough. Senator? Is that what he is now? He was just a builder when he ruined us. He turned his hand over to grip mine, his strength surprisingly fierce. I didn't take the money, Rose, he said, his voice gaining a desperate edge. I never stole a dime. I never had a girlfriend. I never wanted to leave the yellow house. Then why? I pleaded. Why did you destroy us? I didn't leave to destroy your life, Rose, he said, looking deep into my soul. I left to save it. And then, in the quiet hum of that hospital room, he began to speak. And the story he told me was so terrifying, so full of darkness and corruption, that I found myself wishing for the old lie. I wished he had just cheated on me. Because the truth was a monster that had been living under our city's floorboards for 20 years. It was the bridge, Rose, Thaddius whispered, his voice gaining a little strength from the anger that still burned, even after 20 years. A great river crossing. That was the pride of the city, and it was the tomb of our marriage. I squeezed his hand, urging him to continue. I remembered that bridge. I remembered how proud he was when he got the contract. He used to spread the blueprints out on our dining table, using salt and pepper shakers to hold down the corners, showing me where the suspension cables would go. He looked like a boy with a new train set. I was the lead structural integrity officer, he said. My job was to make sure the concrete was the right mix, the steel was the right grade. It was simple. Math doesn't lie. Numbers don't have agendas. He took a ragged breath, the machine next to him beeping faster. But people do. He told me about a cold morning in October. He was down at the site,
wearing his hard hat, checking the pylons on the south bank. The concrete had just been poured the week before. It should have been perfect, smooth, impenetrable. But when Thaddius ran his sonic testing equipment over it, the readings were wrong. It was honeycomb rose, he said, looking at the ceiling. Inside the concrete, where nobody could see, it was full of air pockets. They had diluted the mixture. They used cheap sand. They used half the rebar the plans called for. He did the math right there on the muddy bank.
He calculated the load-bearing capacity. If a heavy storm hit, or just 5 years of rush hour traffic, he shuddered. The south pylon would shear. The bridge would collapse. Hundreds of cars would go into the river. Thousands of people would die. My blood ran cold. I drive over that bridge every Sunday to go to church. Thaddius went straight to the top. He didn't go to the foreman. He went to the owner of the construction consortium, Marcus Thorne. Back then, Thorne wasn't a senator yet. He was just the richest developer in the tri-state area, a man who wore $3,000 suits and had a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I walked into his office, Thaddius said. It was on the 45th floor. Glass walls. You could see the whole city. You could see our little neighborhood from there, looking like toy houses. Thaddius slammed the report on Thorne's mahogany desk. "We have to tear it down, Mr. Thorne. The south pylon. It's garbage. It's a death trap." Thorne didn't panic. He didn't yell. He just swiveled his chair around and looked out the window. "Tear it down?" Thorne repeated softly. "Thaddius, do you know how much that would cost? We're talking $50 million. We're talking delays. The city wants this bridge open for the election cycle." "I don't care about the election," Thaddius had shouted. "I care about the people who will be driving on it." Thorne turned back around. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. He slid it across the desk. It was heavy. "There's $200,000 in there, Thaddius," Thorne said, his voice smooth as silk. "And there's a job waiting for you in our overseas division in Dubai, triple your salary. All you have to do is sign off on the inspection report." I looked at my husband, lying in that hospital bed, broken and poor. "You didn't take it," I whispered. It was a question. I knew his heart. "No," Thaddius said, tears welling up again. I threw the envelope back at him. I told him I was going to the district attorney. I told him I was going to the newspapers. I told him no amount of money was worth human lives. Thaddius closed his eyes tight, as if reliving the moment the trap snapped shut. I turned to leave. My hand was on the doorknob. And then Thorne spoke. He didn't sound like a businessman anymore. He sounded like the devil. "Sit down, Mr. Miller. Let's look at some other pictures." Thorne had opened a folder on his desk. He spread out photographs. Thaddius described them to me, and I felt sick to my stomach. There was a photo of me walking out of the grocery store, carrying bags. A photo of me pruning the rose bushes in our front yard. A photo of me sleeping in our bed, taken through the bedroom window at night. A photo of me waiting at the bus stop. He had been watching us for weeks, Thaddius sobbed. He knew my inspection was coming up. He was prepared. Thorne had leaned forward, his face dead serious. "You are a righteous man, Thaddius. I admire that. You're willing to be a martyr, but are you willing to make her a martyr?" Thorne laid it out, simple and brutal. "If Thaddius went to the police, the DA, or the press, I would have an accident, a car crash, a gas leak explosion in the house, a mugging gone wrong. I can touch her anywhere, anytime," Thorne had said, "and you won't be able to stop it. You'll be the hero who exposed Betrayal, sure, but you'll be a widower attending a closed casket funeral." Thaddius had frozen. The fight drained out of him. He knew men like Thorne. He knew they didn't make idle threats. "So I made a deal with the devil," Thaddius whispered. "I begged him. I asked him what he wanted. And this is the part that breaks me, listeners. This is the cruelty that makes you question humanity. Thorne didn't just want silence. He wanted insurance. "If you just disappear, she'll look for you," Thorne had said. "She'll go to the police. She'll make noise. I don't like noise. We need to make sure she never wants to see you again. We need to make sure she hates you." So Thorn drafted the plan. He forced Thaddius to sign the loan documents, loans from banks Thorn effectively owned or controlled. He forced Thaddius to empty our joint accounts and hand the cash over to Thorn's fixer. He forced Thaddius to write a letter of resignation that sounded erratic and bitter. "He orchestrated my fall," Thaddius said.
"He made me look like a thief and a coward. He said, 'If you do this, if you make her despise you, I will let her live. She'll lose the house, yes, she'll struggle, but she will be breathing. And if you ever try to contact her, if you ever try to explain, the deal is off and she dies.'" I sat there in the hospital chair, my hands covering my mouth, weeping silently. All those years, all those nights I cursed his name, all those times I shouted at the ceiling, asking God why he abandoned me. He hadn't abandoned me. He had thrown himself on a grenade to save me. "Where did you go?" I asked, wiping my face with my sleeve, "after you left the house that day?" "Nowhere," he said softly. "I couldn't leave the city, Rose. I couldn't leave you unprotected." He told me about the first night. He slept under the overpass of the very bridge he knew was dangerous. He had no money. Thorn took it all to make the embezzlement story look real. He had no coat. It was November. He told me about the first year. He learned to eat out of dumpsters behind restaurants. He learned which shelters were safe and which ones were run by gangs. He learned to make himself invisible. But the hardest part wasn't the hunger. It wasn't the cold. The hardest part was watching you, he said. "Watching me?" I asked. "I followed you, Rose," he confessed. "From a distance, always from a distance." He told me things he couldn't possibly know unless he was there. He saw me when I moved into the apartment above the laundromat. He saw me struggling to carry a second-hand sofa up the stairs by myself. He was hiding in the alley across the street, crying because he couldn't help me lift it. He saw me working at the diner downtown. He saw the manager yell at me one day for dropping a tray. Thaddius was outside the window, fists clenched, ready to shatter the glass, but he held back, because if he interfered, Thorn would know. He saw me crying on our anniversary, sitting on a park bench alone. He was 10 feet away, hidden behind a large oak tree, whispering, "Happy anniversary," to the wind. "I was your ghost, Rose," he said. "I checked the locks on your apartment building door to make sure they were secure. When that stray dog was bothering folks in your neighborhood, I chased it off. When you got the flu 5 years ago and didn't leave your apartment for 3 days, I left a bottle of Gatorade and some aspirin on your doorstep. I rang the bell and ran." I gasped. I remembered that. I thought it was a neighbor. I thought it was an angel. It was him. But Thorn, he kept tabs too. Thaddius's voice grew darker. Thorn's man knew Thaddius was still in the city. They tolerated it, as long as he stayed a bum, as long as he stayed crazy old Thaddius. "Every time I got too close to looking normal," Thaddius said, pointing to his ribs. "Every time I tried to get a day labor job or wash my clothes, his goons would find me. They'd drag me into a van. They'd beat me until I couldn't walk. They'd say, 'Remember the deal, trash. You're a bum. Stay a bum, or Rose pays the price.'" That explained the scars. That explained the fear in his eyes when he first saw me at the recycling center. He wasn't afraid of me. He was afraid for me. "I let them break my bones," Thaddius whispered, his voice fading as exhaustion took over. "I let them break my dignity. I let the world think I was garbage, because as long as I was garbage, you were safe." He looked at me, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. "I'm so sorry I lost the house, Rose. I'm so sorry you had to scrub floors. It was the only way I could keep you alive." I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but my heart felt like it was expanding, breaking out of the cage of bitterness I'd kept it in for 20 years. I leaned over the bed. I wrapped my arms around his fragile, broken shoulders. I smelled the antiseptic soap
and the faint, lingering scent of the streets. But underneath that, I smelled him, my husband. "You fool," I wept into his neck. "You wonderful, stupid, brave fool. You didn't just save my life, Thaddius. You gave your life for mine every single day." I pulled back and looked at him. The anger was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve, a fury different from what I felt before. This wasn't the hot, chaotic anger of betrayal. This was the cold, calculating anger of justice. "Is the proof still there?" I asked.
The evidence you found 20 years ago? Did Thorn destroy it? Thaddius shook his head weakly. A small, mischievous spark lit up in his eyes, the first spark of the old Thaddius I'd seen. "Thorn thinks he destroyed it," Thaddius rasped. "He burned all my files at the office, but he forgot who I am. I'm an engineer, Rose. I believe in backups." He coughed, gripping my hand tight. "Before I went to Thorn's office that day, I made a copy. The test results, the concrete samples, and I recorded the meeting, Rose. I had a dictaphone in my jacket pocket. I have him on tape threatening to kill you." "Where is it?" I demanded. "Where is it, Thaddius?" He smiled, a crooked, painful smile. "The old workshop," he said, "behind the yellow house. I buried it in a lead box under the floorboards, beneath the heavy lathe machine. I knew Thorn wouldn't look there. I knew the new owners wouldn't move that machine. It weighs a ton." He looked at me with intense worry. "But Rose, you can't go there. It's been 20 years. People live there. And if Thorn finds out—" I stood up straight, smoothing down my dress. I grabbed my cane. "Thorn took my house," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "He took my husband. He took 20 years of my life. He thinks I'm just an old woman who scrubs toilets. He thinks I'm weak." I looked at Thaddius. He's about to find out that he didn't just mess with an engineer. He messed with a wife who has 20 years of catching up to do.
"Rest now, Thaddius," I said, kissing his forehead. "You've done your job. You kept me safe. Now it's my turn to keep you safe." I walked out of that hospital room, and for the first time in 2 decades, I didn't walk with my head down. I walked with a mission. Outside, the rain had started to fall, a cold, hard rain. But I didn't feel the cold. I had a fire burning inside me that could burn the whole city down. I was going back to the yellow house.
I took a taxi to the old neighborhood. It was an extravagance I couldn't afford, costing me 3 days' worth of grocery money. But I couldn't walk that far, and I couldn't risk the bus schedule. The rain was coming down in sheets now, drumming against the roof of the cab like 1,000 nervous fingers tapping on a table. "Here?" the driver asked, looking at me in the rearview mirror. He sounded skeptical. It was a nice neighborhood, upper middle class, not the kind of place where old women in worn-out coats usually get dropped off at midnight. "Yes," I said, handing him the crumpled bills. "Right here." I stood on the sidewalk as the taxi drove away, its taillights dissolving into the wet darkness. I turned to look at the house. Our house. It wasn't yellow anymore. The new owners, whoever they were, had painted it a trendy, soulless gray. Grayish, I think they call it. It looked cold. It looked like a tombstone. The flower beds where I used to grow hydrangeas were gone, replaced by severe, prickly hedges. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from fear, but from grief. I could see the ghost of Thaddius on the porch, waving goodbye. I could see the ghost of myself, 20 years younger, sweeping the steps. But I didn't have time for ghosts. I had a job to do. I gripped my cane, a sturdy piece of hickory Thaddius had carved for my mother years ago, and walked around the side of the property. The driveway was paved with new brick, expensive. I made my way to the backyard fence. It was a tall, privacy fence now, not the friendly chain link we used to have. But I remembered something. I remembered the layout of the land. There was a drainage ditch that ran behind the property, a narrow strip of city land that nobody ever maintained.
I waded through the tall, wet grass of the ditch. The mud sucked at my boots, trying to pull me down. My arthritis flared in my hips, a hot, grinding pain with every step. "Keep going, old woman," I told myself. "Thaddius slept on concrete for 20 years. You can walk through some mud." I reached the back of the shed. It was the same structure. Thaddius had built it with reinforced timber, so I knew it would last, but the wood was weathered now. I felt along the bottom of the back wall. Thaddius had a secret way in. Not a door, but a loose panel. He used to joke, "If I ever lock myself out, Rose, just kick the third board from the left." I prayed the new owners hadn't fixed it. I found the board. I wedged the tip of my cane under it and pried. The wood groaned. I froze, listening. Silence. Just the rain and the wind and the trees. I pushed harder. With a rusty screech of nails, the board gave way, swinging inward just enough for a small person to squeeze through. I'm not small anymore, honey. I've gotten thick around the middle from cheap carbohydrates and lack of movement. But desperation is a powerful lubricant. I got down on my belly in the mud.
I pushed my purse through first, then my head, then my shoulders. I shimmied through that hole like a worm, scraping my back, tearing my coat. When I popped out on the other side, I was inside the shed. It smelled of gasoline, fertilizer, and old dust, the smell of a workspace. I clicked on the small flashlight I'd brought. The beam cut through the darkness. The shed was full of junk, a riding lawnmower, a stack of pool furniture, boxes of Christmas decorations. But there in the corner, shrouded under a heavy canvas tarp, was the shape I was looking for. I limped over and pulled the tarp back. The lathe. It was a massive piece of industrial machinery, cast iron, weighing nearly 1,000 pounds. Thaddius loved this machine. He used to turn table legs on it. "Okay," I whispered to the silent machine. He said under the floorboards, beneath the lathe. I looked at the floor. It was heavy plywood. The machine sat on top of it. There was no way I could move the machine. I'm a 67-year-old cleaning lady, not a weightlifter. But Thaddius was an engineer. He wouldn't have made it impossible. I got down on my knees, shining the light around the base of the machine, and then I saw it. The floorboards directly under the motor housing weren't nailed down. They were cut separately, fit together like a puzzle. You couldn't lift them up because the machine was on them. But maybe. I saw a small notch in the wood. A finger hold? I tried to pull. Nothing. Then I remembered. Under the floorboards. I took my cane and smashed the floorboard next to the machine. The wood was old. It splintered. I hit it again and again, the loud thwack, 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 masked by a sudden clap of thunder outside. I broke through the adjacent board. Now I had a hole. I reached my hand down into the crawl space under the shed. The earth was damp and cold. I felt around blindly under the section of floor where the heavy machine sat. Spider webs clung to my fingers. Something skittered over my hand. A beetle? A rat? I shuddered, but didn't pull back. Where is it? Where is it? My fingers brushed against something hard and cold. Not a rock. Metal. It was a box. I grabbed it. It was heavy. I pulled, but it was stuck in the dirt. I dug with my bare hands, my fingernails breaking against the rocky soil. I clawed at the earth like a dog, panting, sweating, tears of frustration mixing with the rain on my face. "Come on," I grunted. "Come on." With one final yank, the suction of the mud gave way. The box came free. It was a lead box, about the size of a shoebox, welded shut but with a latch. It was covered in rust and slime, but it felt solid. I pulled it up through the hole I'd smashed in the floor. I hugged it to my chest, dirtying my dress, not caring. I had it. I held Thaddius's life in my hands. Suddenly, the shed door handle rattled. I froze. I clicked off my flashlight. "I'm telling you, I heard something," a man's voice said from outside.
Sounded like someone smashing wood. "It's probably just a raccoon, Dave.
a woman's voice replied, sounding annoyed. "It's pouring rain. Come back to bed." "I'm checking," the man said. The key turned in the lock. The door started to open. I scrambled backward into the shadows behind the stack of pool furniture. I held my breath, my heart beating so loud I was sure he could hear it. The beam of a powerful flashlight swept the room. It hit the lawnmower. It hit the lathe. "See?" the woman called out. "Nothing." The beam moved to the floor. "Wait," the man said. "Look at that. There's a hole in the floor. Something's been digging." He stepped into the shed. He was wearing pajamas and slippers. He was 5 feet away from me. If he took 2 more steps, he'd see me huddled behind the chaise lounges. "Damn rats," he muttered. "They chewed right through the plywood. I'm calling the exterminator tomorrow." He backed out and slammed the door. I heard him lock it. I let out a breath that was half sob, half laugh. Rats. Yes, I was the rat tonight. I waited 10 minutes until the lights in the house went out. Then I squeezed back out through the loose panel in the rear wall, clutching the lead box against my stomach. I didn't go home. My apartment wasn't safe. If Thorne knew Thaddius was talking, he might be watching my place. I went to the only place in the city that felt like a fortress. St. Jude's Home for the Elderly, room 304.
It was 2 a.m. when I banged on the window. The night nurse knew me. I used to volunteer there before my knees got too bad. She let me in, thinking I was in trouble. "I need to see Mr. Abernathy," I told her, shivering, dripping water onto the polished linoleum. "Rose, it's 2 in the morning. He's asleep." "Wake him up," I said, my voice steel. "It's life or death." Mr. Abernathy was 82 years old. He used to be the toughest investigative journalist at the City Chronicle, back before clickbait and fluff pieces took over. He was the man who brought down the mob in the 90s. Now he sat in a wheelchair, grumbling about the pudding, but his mind was still sharp as a tack. He sat up in bed as I entered, switching on his lamp. He looked at me, wet, muddy, holding a rusted metal box. "Rose," he squinted, "you look like you just crawled out of a grave." "I crawled out of the past, Arthur," I said. I set the box on his bedside table, "and I brought you the story of the century." We used a screwdriver from the maintenance closet to pry the latch open. It took us 20 minutes. Inside, wrapped in layers of oilcloth, were 3 things: a thick stack of documents, blueprints with red ink circling the weak points, a ledger book with handwritten notes of payoffs, and a small black cassette tape. Arthur Abernathy looked at the tape. He had an old cassette player on his shelf. He listened to audiobooks on it. With trembling hands, he put the tape in and pressed play. For a moment, there was just static. Then a voice. $50 million, Thaddius. Don't be a Boy Scout." It was Marcus Thorne. Younger, smoother, but unmistakably him. Then Thaddius's voice. Strong, clear. Not the wheezing rattle of the dying man in the hospital. "I can't do it, Marcus. People will die." "People die every day, Mr. Miller. That's the cost of progress. Now, let's talk about your wife. Let's talk about Rose. She takes the bus to the market on Tuesdays, doesn't she? Be a shame if the brakes failed." The recording went on. It detailed the threat. It detailed the plan to frame Thaddius. It detailed the embezzlement scheme. I sat there, listening to my husband bargain for my life. "I'll do it." Thaddius's voice on the tape broke. "I'll leave. Just swear to me she won't be touched." "I swear it. As long as you are gone, she is safe." The tape clicked off. Arthur Abernathy sat in silence for a long time. He took off his glasses and wiped them. When he looked up, his eyes were blazing with a fire I hadn't seen in him for years. "Rose," he said quietly, "this man is a United States Senator. He's up for re-election next month. He's leading in the polls." "Not for long," I said. Arthur reached for his phone, an old flip phone. "I still know people. I know a federal prosecutor who isn't in Thorne's pocket. Her name is Jenkins. She's hungry." He looked at the documents. "This proves the bridge is structurally unsound." "Yes," I said.
Thaddius said it's a ticking time bomb. Arthur's face went pale. Rose, the governor is scheduled to lead a parade across that bridge on Saturday, 3 days from now. There will be thousands of people on it. Floats, marching bands, the wait. Oh my God, I whispered. We don't have time for a court case, Arthur said, grabbing his cane. We have to stop that parade, and we have to take Thorn down, now. Part 4, The Lioness and the Law. The next 48 hours were a blur of coffee, fear, and lawyers. We met Sarah Jenkins at a diner at 4 a.m. She was young, sharp, and skeptical, until she heard the tape. I watched her face transform from tired bureaucrat to a hunter smelling blood. We need to move fast, Jenkins said. If Thorn gets wind of this, you two are dead, and the evidence will disappear. He thinks the evidence is burned, I said, and he thinks Thaddius is a dying homeless man. Good, Jenkins said. Let's keep it that way until the trap is set. The plan was simple but dangerous. Thorn was hosting a massive fundraising gala at the City Hall ballroom on Friday night, the night before the parade. Every powerful person in the state would be there. The press, the governor, the police chief. Jenkins wanted to arrest him there, in public, where he couldn't make a phone call to make it go away, where the cameras were already rolling. But we need a witness, Jenkins said. The tape is old. The defense will argue it's a deep fake or altered.
We need someone to authenticate it. We need Thaddius. I looked at the floor. He's dying, Sarah. He can barely lift his head. He doesn't have to lift his head, she said softly. He just has to be there. We can set up a video link from the hospital. Can he do that? I thought about Thaddius. I thought about the scars on his chest. I thought about the 20 years he spent in the rain. He'll do it, I said. He's been waiting 20 years to do it. Friday night. I wasn't wearing my cleaning uniform. I wasn't wearing my old wool coat. I went to the thrift store. I bought a dress. It was blue, the same color as the hydrangeas I used to grow. I bought a hat. I put on lipstick for the first time since Thaddius left. I wasn't hiding anymore. I walked into City Hall with a visitor's pass Arthur had forged for me. The ballroom was glittering with crystal chandeliers. The air smelled of expensive perfume and champagne. I saw Marcus Thorn. He was standing on a raised platform, holding a glass of wine, laughing with the chief of police. He looked distinguished, silver hair, a tan, a $3,000 suit. He looked like a man who had won. I felt a hand on my elbow. It was one of Jenkins' agents, dressed as a waiter. "It's time, Mrs. Miller," he whispered. "The DA is backstage. The troopers are at the doors." I nodded. I gripped my cane. I walked through the crowd.
People looked at me, an old woman in a thrift store dress and orthopedic shoes, with confusion. I didn't belong there. I was the help. I was the invisible class. But I parted that crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. I walked straight toward the stage. Thorn saw me. He stopped laughing. He frowned. He squinted, trying to place my face. He recognized me. I saw the color drain from his cheeks. He signaled to his security guards. 2 massive men in black suits started moving toward me. But before they could reach me, the giant screen behind the stage, which had been showing a slideshow of Thorn's charity work, flickered. The music cut out. A loud, static hiss filled the room. Then, a video feed appeared on the massive screen. It was a hospital bed. A collective gasp went through the room. There was Thaddius. He was propped up on pillows. He looked frail, yes, but his eyes were open, and they were staring straight into the camera, straight at Thorn. "Hello, Marcus." Thaddius's voice boomed through the speakers. It was weak, but magnified by the sound system, it sounded like the voice of God. Thorn dropped his wine glass. It shattered on the stage, red wine staining the carpet like blood. "Cut the feed," Thorn screamed, panic cracking his voice. "Someone cut the damn feed. This is a hack." "It's not a hack," I shouted. I was at the foot of the stage now. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me. The old woman in the blue dress.
"It's a reckoning," I said. On the screen, Thaddius continued. "My name is Thaddius Miller. 20 years ago, I was the lead engineer on the Great River Crossing.
And 20 years ago, Senator Thorne forced me to disappear, to hide the fact that he built a bridge out of sand. Lies, Thorne bellowed, his face turning purple. Arrest that woman, she's deranged. But nobody moved. The security guards had stopped, because walking out from the curtains behind Thorne was District Attorney Sarah Jenkins, and behind her were 6 state troopers. It's not a lie, Senator, Jenkins said into a microphone. We have the original soil reports, we have the ledgers, and we have the tapes. She hit a button on a remote. Thorne's voice, the young, arrogant Thorne from the cassette tape, filled the ballroom. She takes the bus to the market on Tuesdays, doesn't she? Be a shame if the brakes failed. The silence in that room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Thorne looked around. He looked at the governor, who was backing away from him with a look of horror. He looked at his donors. He looked at the cameras. He realized it was over. He slumped. The arrogance evaporated, leaving just a scared, greedy old man. Marcus Thorne, Jenkins said, her voice ringing out. You are under arrest for racketeering, fraud, extortion, and the false imprisonment of Thaddius Miller. As the troopers cuffed him, flashing cameras blinded us. But I didn't look at Thorne.
I looked at the screen. I looked at Thaddius. He was smiling, a small, tired smile. He raised one hand in a weak wave. I waved back.
This scandal didn't just break, honey. It exploded. By the next morning, the Great River Crossing was closed. Barricades were up, police lights flashing against the dawn sky. The governor canceled the parade. Engineers, honest ones this time, were swarming over the pylons like ants. They found the cracks within 3 hours. Thaddius was right. He was right about everything. If that parade had gone forward with the marching bands and the heavy floats, well, I don't even want to let my mind go there. But while the city was in an uproar, while reporters were camped out on the hospital lawn shouting questions, I was inside, in the quiet of room 402. The adrenaline of the night before had faded, leaving behind a cold, hard reality. Thaddius was slipping away. The doctors told me his heart was just too tired. It had been beating in survival mode for 20 years, pumping through fear, through cold, through starvation. It had held on just long enough to see his mission through, just long enough to see me safe. And now, like a soldier whose war is finally over, it was ready to rest. I sat by his bed. The sun was coming through the blinds, painting stripes of light across his chest. That poor chest, mapped with the history of his sacrifice. He was awake, but barely. His breathing was shallow, a soft, rasping sound that filled the room. "Rose," he whispered. He didn't open his eyes. "I'm here, Thaddius," I said, leaning close, stroking his thin gray hair. "I'm right here."
Did they close the bridge? They closed it, honey, I told him, tears sliding down my cheeks. Nobody is going to get hurt. You saved them all. A faint smile touched his lips. It was the most peaceful look I had seen on his face since that day in the kitchen 20 years ago. "And Thorne?" he asked. "In a cell," I said, with a savage kind of satisfaction, without bail. Sarah Jenkins says he's going to die in prison. He can never hurt us again. He let out a long, shuddering breath. His body seemed to sink deeper into the mattress, the tension finally leaving his muscles. "I'm tired, Rosie," he murmured. "I'm so tired." "I know," I soothed him, taking his hand. I kissed his knuckles, rough and scarred. "You can rest now. You don't have to watch from the shadows anymore. You don't have to be cold anymore." He opened his eyes then. The milky haze seemed to clear for just a second, revealing that bright, piercing blue I fell in love with at the county fair 40 years ago. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the life I promised, he whispered, a tear leaking from the corner of his eye. I wanted to give you the world. Instead, I gave you a ghost. Thaddius Miller, I said, my voice trembling but firm. You listened to me. You gave me more than any mansion or fancy car. You gave me your life. You loved me enough to suffer for me. No woman has ever been loved more than that. He squeezed my hand, weakly, then weaker still. My rose, he breathed.
And then the squeezing stopped. The monitor let out a long, steady tone. Beep. I didn't call the nurses right away. I didn't scream. I just sat there, holding his hand, feeling the warmth slowly leave it. I looked at his face. The lines of pain were smoothing out. The fear was gone. He looked like my husband again. Go with God, Thaddius, I whispered into the silence. I'll see you at the clearing at the end of the path. The funeral was small. It was just me, Arthur Abernathy in his wheelchair, Sarah Jenkins, and a few of the nurses who had cared for him in his final days. We buried him on a hill overlooking the city, not the side overlooking the bridge. I didn't want him to have to look at that thing ever again. We buried him facing the east, where the sun rises. The headstone was simple. I paid for it with the very last of my savings. It didn't say engineer. It didn't say hero, though he was one. It read, Thaddius Miller, beloved husband. He bore the weight of the world so she could fly. 6 months later. I'm sitting on a balcony as I record this for you. The settlement from the city came through last week. It was substantial, more zeros than I've ever seen in my life. The lawyer said it was for wrongful imprisonment and pain and suffering. Funny thing is, all that money can't buy the one thing I want. It can't buy me 5 minutes to cook him a pot roast again. But it bought me this condo. It's nice.
It has warm floors, so my feet never get cold. It has a big kitchen, and it has a view of the park where Thaddius used to hide and watch me. I go down there sometimes. I sit on that bench where he used to hide behind the oak tree. I talk to him. I tell him about the weather. I tell him about the books I'm reading. Thorne was sentenced last month. Life in a maximum security federal penitentiary. The judge called him a cancer on the public trust. He lost everything. His money, his reputation, his freedom. Karma, honey. It might be slow, like a heavy train, but it always arrives at the station eventually. As for me, I'm not the angry woman I was at the start of this story. The bitterness is gone, washed away by the truth. I'm learning to live again. I joined a knitting club. I volunteer at the soup kitchen on Tuesdays, the same one Thaddius used to eat at. When I serve the stew to the homeless men there, I look at them. I really look at them. I wonder what stories they are carrying. I wonder who they are protecting. Because if there is one thing this tragedy taught me, it's this. You never really know what someone is carrying. You see a man in dirty rags, and you think he's failed at life, but he might be the most successful man you've ever met because he succeeded in the only thing that matters, protecting the one he loves. Thaddius Miller was a homeless man. He was a bum. He was invisible. But to me, he was a king. That is where my story comes to an end.
It's a heavy one, I know, but I hope it reminds you to hold your loved ones a little tighter tonight. I hope it reminds you that things aren't always what they seem, and that love, real, true love, is sometimes about the things you don't see. Thank you for spending this time with me and for letting me keep Thaddius's memory alive by sharing his truth with you. If this story resonated with your soul, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And please, tell me in the comments, have you ever judged someone only to find out you were wrong? I'd love to read your stories. I wish you peace in your heart and warmth in your home. Until we meet again.